Since we're all stuck in quarantine, I'm sure you all have a burning desire to go to some foreign destination and get out of your boring house. Now, for how many of you is that place Wyoming? Probably none. Hi, my name is Garrett Meredith, and in this speech I will prove to you why Wyoming is somewhere you need to visit. The first time I went to Wyoming was to go camping with my family in Yellowstone National Park, when I was around 7 years old. Since then, I have been back to Wyoming 4 more times, and I have traveled throughout the state. I have only had a glimpse at its immense natural beauty, and I hope to be able to continue exploring what it has to offer. After visiting Wyoming many times, I have fallen in love with its beauty, and I intend to persuade you that Wyoming is not what people make it up to be. I'll clear up some false beliefs that many people have about Wyoming involving what it has to offer, and I'll show you that it is much more than what people make it up to be. Some people may say that since Wyoming is in the Midwest, it has a lack of beauty like many of the states around it due to its large agriculture and livestock backgrounds. When people look at Wyoming on a map, they tend to see how it is located to the west of Nebraska, South Dakota, and Kansas, which are more agricultural states. This tends to lead to the common misconception that Wyoming is just another flat state full of farms. According to the USDA, 55% of Wyoming's landmass is used for agriculture, which is more than most states. About 90% of that agriculture land being grazing land for cattle and other livestock. Compared to other states, 55% of agriculture is relatively high, but just like California, Wyoming has so much more to offer than the agriculture. Another reason people believe Wyoming is to be a boring state is due to its low population. Wyoming has the smallest population in the U.S., which can make people wonder why people live there. Big bustling cities aren't what Wyoming is known for. It isn't called the cowboy state because everybody lives in cities. It's because the state is built up from ranches and cowboys. Although Wyoming doesn't have big cities, it doesn't mean there's nothing there. There are millions of places to go in the world, and people may not ever think to go to Wyoming because it might just be the last place you ever point to on a map. People may believe that there's no use in going to boring Wyoming when you could go to any other cool place in the world. But there are some things in Wyoming that you have to see once in your life that I'll get onto later. Since we go to school in San Diego, a beautiful city located on the coast of California, it's hard for some people to get away from the ocean. If you do not know your geography very well, you might not know there are in fact no oceans within nearly 1,000 miles of Wyoming. Admittedly, that is one downside to Wyoming. But with what it lacks in beaches, it makes up for in other natural beauty. According to Brooks, people that were born and raised in Wyoming love the outdoors, miles of beautiful landscape, and not overpopulated by people. If you aren't a big fan of the great outdoors, then Wyoming might just be how you would picture it. But if you love nature like I do, there are endless activities in Wyoming. During my time there, I have spent the majority of the time exploring the national parks and other thousands of miles of outdoors. Now that I've gone over what some people believe about Wyoming, it's time to go over what it has to offer. Wyoming is home to some of the United States' most beautiful wonders, hosting 6 national parks within the state. Lisa Cheney said, "In Wyoming, the beauty of our mountains is only matched by the grit of our people." Wyoming calls for explorers and lovers of nature due to its vast wildlife and beautiful national parks. The most notable park is Yellowstone National Park in the northwestern corner of Wyoming. Beneath Yellowstone is a supervolcano that causes geysers and hot springs to be prevalent throughout the land. These pools are part of the ecosystem in the park that keeps animals warm through the below-freezing winters. According to the National Park Service, there are hundreds of different species in the park, including 67 different species of mammals alone. One of my favorite things about Wyoming is definitely all the wildlife you're able to see that you don't get to see in most other states. I remember waking up to a 6-foot-tall moose standing in the front yard with her babies. It is a regular occurrence to stumble upon wildlife wherever you go because animals are simply everywhere. Whether it's a moose, bison, eagle, elk, or bear, it is rare to go out and not see something you haven't seen before. Other than just nature, there's a lot to do for fun. There's horseback riding with amazing views, river rafting, fishing, and swimming. And those are just some of the things to do in the summer. In the winter, Wyoming receives some of the best snow out of anywhere in the country, giving the opportunity to ski and snowboard along with all other winter sports. The main resort is in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, receives 38 feet of snow a year, giving it fresh powder all winter long. Unlike Lake Tahoe and Big Bear, Wyoming doesn't get thousands of people a day mobbing the mountains at all points of the year. There is rarely a time that you hit traffic in Wyoming unless there's a bison blocking the road. Wyoming isn't the common tourist vacation destination, making it much easier to handle when you go, not having to deal with the large crowds and people that you expect in other places. Now that you have learned a little more about what Wyoming has in store, you should take a look for yourself. There's so much nature to explore that you have to experience it. If you Google Yellowstone and Grand Tetons, you can catch a glimpse of what there is to see and do in Wyoming. Back here is a picture of the Grand Tetons in Wyoming. That's one of the favorite views I get to see whenever I go. I have now shown you the natural beauty that Wyoming holds and possibly made you rethink your previous opinion. I went over the misconceptions along with some of the bad sides of Wyoming, along with covering the many things to do in the state. Now, whenever someone mentions Wyoming, try not to think of it as that one boring state in the middle of nowhere, but instead think about those things that it has to offer. Thank you for watching.